I am very honored and humbled to be invited once more, and I'm especially happy to be in Dublin in Ireland because this is just a beautiful, wonderful, happy country. And I had this really, really fun experience when I arrived late Sunday because I was leaving the airport and I was jumping into a taxi, and the taxi driver was only asking me two questions. And the first question is, where do you want to go? And I said, I want to go to the Royal Marine. And the second question, he turned around, looked at me, and then he said, are you English? And I said, no, I'm not, I'm Danish. And then he said, oh, that's a good thing. And I was sitting there thinking, why is it that we as human beings have a tendency to compete all the time? Now, I do understand that if Tottenham is playing Liverpool, we need to compete. I mean, a relationship where the two teams are sitting down negotiating how to get most out of that game between each other, wouldn't make it really fun for you and I, right? Now, I put up this small cartoon up here because this is really how I very often view relationship. We are buried in trenches and we're pointing the rifles towards each other instead of trying to work together in some kind. Now, our negotiating is to achieve more success. Isn't that true? Now, I just know, funny enough, that negotiation is a very crucial part. So I'm really curious, and one of my big problems is, why is it we don't really seriously improve the way we negotiate? And I have spent more than 20 years just studying this together with my universities and my teams, focusing on laboratory negotiations and real-life negotiations, just to try and figure out, why don't we seriously improve? Now, how many of you know the famous book, Getting to Yes? How many of you have read it? How many of you are using the content of that book? Some of you are lying. And what is even more interesting is that all people I meet around the world, the majority of everybody is saying, yeah, I read the book. When I ask the next question, are you using the content, very few actually saying yes. So do you know what? In 1983, I just repeat that, 1983, that was when that book was published. It was a great book. It was an outstanding book. It was one of the first books actually focusing on negotiation as a very important tool. But you know what? It didn't work. Because the majority of everybody is still doing whatever they did in the 70s and the 60s and the 50s and 1800 and 1700. They're still negotiating the same way, even though this book came out. I did my absolutely first book on negotiation in 1998. And you know what? Accidentally, I reread that book about a year ago. And I had to conclude that that was the worst rubbish I ever read. I'm here with a simple mission. My life is just a simple mission, really. That is to introduce to organizations, governments, and individuals how much better we can do in our relationships. How much more successful we can become if we actually understand that negotiation is a strategy. What I'm going to talk about actually won the prize as Best Negotiation and Tender Process in Denmark in February. The Organization of Public Procurement Officers in Denmark are doing that every year. They're picking out a project and a business process that they find quite unique. And one of my clients in Denmark by the name of Blue Kolding, which is a public water and waste company, actually won this prize by implementing the strategies from the book. And the two strategies I'm going to share with you guys today are the strategy of SMARTnership and the strategy of NegoEconomics. And I'm going to share with you in a second what that is all about. But the reason they won, as the Organization of Public Procurement Officers in Denmark was saying, is that Blue Kolding has been thinking outside the box and approaching tendering and negotiation in a complete new way. They have included NegoEconomics and SMARTnership that is optimizing the agreement for both parties and creates a true win-win deal. It is clever, it's smart, it's collaboration, it's the right way to negotiate in a process. Another thing I picked up yesterday that Jim was presenting was the most important work skills until 2020. And what was exciting about that presentation is that I actually disagree. Not that I'm disagreeing that negotiation is not important, but as you can see, negotiation is up here as number 5. And as the study from World Economic Forum showed, it will move down to number 9 by 2020. That may be right, by the way, but you know what? I don't consider negotiation just to be a skill, because I know negotiation is a leadership strategy. How many of you guys, and I've talked to a lot of you already, and it's very impressive companies, and it's great what you guys are doing, and I'm really impressed with a lot of you as individuals. So I have an exciting question for all of you. How many of you have an official negotiation strategy in your company? Could you raise your hand? Is the mic working? Now, guys, if there's only 4 things you should remember from my 45 minutes presentation, they're coming right now. So if I could advise you to pick up a pen, a piece of paper, an iPad, a computer, whatever, because I would like you to write these things down. These 4 headlines are the key things that is our experience based on more than 35 years of studying the field of negotiation and studying those negotiators who are more successful than others. So it clearly identified those organizations and individuals that are more successful. And one of the things we got up here that clearly identified those that are more successful is the choice of a strategy. The third thing I want to talk about is rules of the game. And here I'm going to tell you something that some of you might be thinking, that is weird. But I can only tell you this, and that is you have to negotiate before you start negotiating on how to negotiate. When I'm telling that to my clients, they all look really puzzled and thinking, what the hell is he talking about now? But seriously, guys, when you meet a new counterpart, you have to negotiate. How are we going to negotiate? Because you know what's funny? One side of the table might see negotiation just like playing tennis. And the other side of the table may see negotiation just like playing chess. That's how differently negotiation could be perceived. United Nations in New York has never ever declared an international standard on how to negotiate. The last thing I want to share with you up here is actually the concept of added value, which is NegoEconomics. And some years ago, we actually discovered something very, very exciting. And that thing we discovered is that a huge unutilized potential is often lost in a negotiation. Let's just take an average commercial negotiation up here. We have a buyer and a seller. And let's say the value of this negotiation up here could be 100 million, whatever. It's not important what this negotiation is all about. What we have discovered in average is that the buyer side, in average, is only leaving this negotiation with about 19% of all the values. So in this case, obviously, that would be 19 million. The funny thing is, ladies and gentlemen, that the buyer doesn't know how much he or she actually gained. But they might be very happy, by the way. On the other side of the table, we have the sales rep. And the seller is leaving this negotiation with an average of 39%, regardless of industry and business and what kind of negotiation. So in this case, the selling side would be leaving with 39 million, okay? And he or she might be very happy. But what neither of these two parties saw, identified, capitalized, or utilized was up to 42% of the values that are dropped, just like I'm dropping the book up here, without neither of the parties saw that potential, gained anything of that potential, or actually utilized that potential. So what I'm telling you is that the concept of NegoEconomics actually described that when two parties have agreed on something, they're still leaving the conference table with a huge amount of money that neither of them saw, capitalized, or utilized. They may be happy, but they still didn't gain the full potential of anything. So how do we actually generate NegoEconomics and move into SMARTnership? Well, very briefly, on the basis of differences. It's so easy, actually. If we have different costs and different benefits and different values, we can utilize NegoEconomics. Now, we don't have time today, but if you want to visit my website, KeldJensen.com, you can actually watch a movie that is describing the blue-collar approach that gave them the award and gave us the award of the best principle and business process. And you can also watch a movie that is describing more in detail on how to utilize and create NegoEconomics. But NegoEconomics is the way forward because we can definitely create 2 + 2 that gives us 7 instead of just 4, and we can win.